Bryson, who is a creative writing student, although I understand that this is also kind of a hybrid project, drawing on multiple genres. Ben's advisor is Bill Craig, and Bill, is this your first thesis? Is that?
These two,
right?
Honor students, yes.
That's right. So another first, and the title is Alive, 162 Days on the Appalachian Trail. Ben's plans for the future are to keep writing and hopefully publish the thesis as he documents his next adventures, which will be biking across the United States and hiking the Pacific Crest Trail and making this thing work. This is part of every presentation in the world, actually. We can't have a presentation until... Is that going through? All right, great. On writing. And a third thing, I decide and I share with Happy Feet what I want to do with my thru hike. I want to capture, I want to compile, and I want to share all of the tiny moments on the Appalachian Trail. Those moments that make thru hikes what they are, those moments that can't possibly exist anywhere else. And I want to capture implicitly why these moments are, for myself as much as for the rest of the world. From Alive, 162 Days on the Appalachian Trail. Thank you all for sticking around for an extra half hour or so. A year ago, I was out hiking the Appalachian Trail, and now I'm back here. And I want to share with you a project that I've been working on for about a year now. And it's basically a travelogue about my time on the Appalachian Trail. But before I start, I want to sort of head off some of your questions with why I wrote this book, because it's a question I struggled with for a very long time when I was starting. And it's also a question that I've been being asked repeatedly. So when I say I'm writing a book about the Appalachian Trail, lots of people say, another one? Because I went online when I was preparing for this presentation, did a Google search on books on the Appalachian Trail. And this is what I found. And this is the first page of about 500 pages, just pictures of book covers that have been written about the Appalachian Trail over the past, I don't know, 50 years or so. So the question was, what can I bring to this genre that's new, that hasn't been written before? And to me, that question was very connected to why I was out there in the first place. So I'll start with that. I was hiking the Appalachian Trail because it's something I've wanted to do really since I was like 5, since I could walk. And right away, I just read everything I could find about the trail. And I have 2 pictures of my favorite books. Has anybody heard of this book? Or read any of this book? Heard of the people in this book? Okay, one person. Okay. So this is a book that has, it's probably the leading anthology of Appalachian Trail literature. It has journals from most of the famous people who hiked the trail. Avery was the first person he was one of the designers, he was the first person to hike it. And this book is read by pretty much every thru hiker, but beyond that, it's really not known about, and there's a reason for that. It's because when I was reading this before I hiked the trail, I would just get hopelessly lost because it would go so much into detail. But I woke up, I hiked for 20 miles, I climbed over this mountain, I passed this river, I walked through this town, and then I went to bed. Then I woke up and I hiked over this mountain, I crossed this river, I went to bed. And I woke up and I did it again. So you read that for 10 minutes and you don't know what you're reading anymore. On the other hand, how many people have read this book or heard of this book? Okay, that's a lot more people. So this is the most well-known book about the Appalachian Trail. And there are very few books that really cross into that popular literature genre. And it's great that books get there. However, this book is probably the most hated book on the Appalachian Trail. And the reason for that is because Bill Bryson, great writer, really funny, but he didn't actually hike the trail. So he he hiked sections of it, but he wasn't actually part of that culture. He was writing about it from the outside, analyzing it, which is not a way that he could get to know it, really. So, coming back to my purpose, my goal was to write something that would be popular for people who are planning to hike the trail, popular for hikers, would go into detail about, I climbed this mountain, this is what I saw, I crossed this river, I went to sleep here, and I woke up the next morning. But make it interesting, and also make sure that people don't get lost in it as they're reading it. So, for a while, I had this idea, and I couldn't figure out how to do it, and eventually I just sat down and started writing. And I started with 3 different sections of my book. One was a script to a scene. Another one was a philosophical sort of meta-essay about why I was out there. And then the third one was a dialogue between a friend and I as we were hiking. And none of these were like what I expected to sit down and write. They were all sort of non-traditional travelogue sort of genre. So from there, I just kept going, and I just kept building this repertoire, this dialogue that I had of writing. And I ended up with, I came up with some quotes, I came up with some more stories, I came up with some just scene descriptions. So the format of this book in the end was just sections that were between about 1/4 of a page and 2 pages long. And they're very disconnected, and they just come one after another, after another, after another, chronologically. And that's what I decided was the best way to keep people invested and to go into the detail, but not overwhelm people by giving this variety and providing these breaks, but also being able to say as much as I wanted in depth about these different sections. And one more question that I'll head off is, what is the Appalachian Trail? The Appalachian Trail is a footpath going from Georgia to Maine. It is 2,185.3 miles. And I struggled writing because people know it's a trail. The word trail is in the name, but it's more than that. It's a community. I mean, it goes through towns. You meet tons of people. It's all about the shelters. It's all about where you sleep at night. It's just like this microcosm that's out there. That's so much more than a trail. And I really wanted to communicate that as well. So I'm going to read 3 scenes that I wrote today. And I want to know what you think, because I still have a few weeks to edit them. Wyabald. On top of Wyabald, we receive trail magic from God. Trail magic today, Wednesday, April 2nd, a sign on the end of the table says, all hikers welcome. Magic provided by the Lord and delivered by Kicho. Travel safely and may God bless. It's mid-afternoon, it's grown hot, the hottest it's been so far on the trail, so we all welcome the opportunity to sit down in the shade. When I arrive, 8 hikers are congregated beneath a tent, drinking Powerade and eating hard-boiled eggs and fresh oranges. I sit down in the middle of them, recognizing a few faces I've met before, but knowing each of them as a hiker. We say little, recovering from the 1,100-foot climb up here, but radiate thanks. Kicho walks around with a dish of soapy water and a bag of freeze pops, shaking people's freshly washed hands. Scrubbing the dirt off of my hands for the first time since Franklin feels wonderful, and I lean back against the cooler, letting the parking lot blur before me, allowing myself time to rest. In the distance, I hear a tiny voice. A girl dressed all in pink is running along the sidewalk, chasing after the rest of her family. "Daddy! Daddy!" she calls. "Daddy! Why are you bald, Daddy? Why you bald? Get it? Get it, Daddy? Get it? Why you bald?" I smile and I bite into a sliver of orange, the first piece of fruit I've eaten since I threw away the rest of my clementines in Franklin. It's the best orange I've ever tasted. The little girl picks up a stick and starts tapping it against the pavement. She hums to herself. Da 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 da. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. And then something amazing happens. Before I can even process what's going on, the air is filled with clapping. I look around. Every hiker around the table has suddenly put down their food to clap to the little girl's song. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. At first, I'm too startled to respond, but then suddenly it occurs to me that I should be clapping too. I put down what's left of my orange. Happy Feet smiles at me, and suddenly I wonder if I'm about to start crying. The girl, apparently, is taken aback as well. She pauses in her singing and looks up at the dirty, smelly, smiling faces above her. For a second, I think that maybe she's going to run away from us. But then she laughs, in even brighter music than her song, and continues. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands! She waves her stick in the air, conducting the hikers as she continues. If you're happy and you know it, then your face will really show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands! She shrieks in joy, then runs over to where her family stands waiting with open arms. Kicho follows her over to her parents and offers her a bar of chocolate. God bless you, child, he says, touching her head. Her mother smiles. You know, that food is for the hikers. They haven't had chocolate in weeks. The little girl looks back at us, then down at her chocolate bar, and then, without another word, walks over, her stick in tow, and begins handing squares of chocolate to all of the hikers who clapped for her song. Later, written in charcoal on the stones at the patio in Wyabald, don't give up. I heart your amazing, wonderful, beautiful, perfect you. We march onward. This next piece is called Road. There's food on top of our mountain, Tadai says to us. Vending machines and water fountains and maybe a visitor center, cold soda and a Snickers bar and a mountaintop hiker oasis. But when I finally get there, all I find is a dreary, gray parking lot and a stupid sign about the Cloudland Hotel that straddles the North Carolina-Tennessee border. You can't buy food at the Cloudland Hotel anymore because it's been a pile of rubble since 1927. During Prohibition, the sign tells me alcohol was legal in Tennessee, but illegal in North Carolina. So a white line was painted down the center of the banquet table in the dining hall. On one side of the room, drinking was perfectly legal, but often the local North Carolina sheriff would lurk in the corner watching for guests who crossed to the other side of the line. Now all there is a locked bathroom, not even a water fountain in the whole desolate, uninhabited, miserably gray summit. Feeling betrayed, I collapse in the grass, wallowing in my misery and waiting for Shakespeare and Happy Feet to arrive so I can dash their hopes upon the ugly, cracked pavement spanning the mountain summit. I try to think of a nice way to tell them that this whole mountain has been a lie, that there's no candy and that there's no soda. Finally, I settle on offering them the rest of the honey in my food bag as compensation. At long last, they emerge from the woods. As expected, Happy Feet also collapses on the ground, but Shakespeare leans over on his poles. It's too much effort to get back up again, he says. I don't think I'll ever get back up again, Happy Feet says. I hand him the honey and he tilts his head back towards the sky, opening his mouth wide, like a drowning man taking one last gasp for breath. He flips the bottle over and squeezes it, and nothing comes out. And then I realized that in my exhaustion, I had forgotten that I had finished my honey and my sandwich at lunch. And I want honey, the poor guy sobs, groping in the air, in hopes that a final drop might tumble from his cheeks, or from the bottle. I watch helplessly as his eyes crinkle up and tears start to run down his cheeks. At about this time, Shakespeare spots a rabbit hopping off into the forest. "Come back, my friend," he calls after him. He slows down, but it keeps hopping. "Now, you remind me of one of my favorite childhood stories." He stands and begins walking into the woods. "What was it called? Ah, yes, Watership Down. A lovely tale. They all died. Be glad you're not in it." He disappears around a bend in the trail, but his voice remains trailing along behind him. "No, don't leave. Let me tell you about this time I climbed a whole mountain. A big mountain, mind you, expecting just a single candy bar on top." I sigh and I force myself to stand up. The shelter is only half a mile away. There, I will be able to rest. "Come on, Happy Feet," I say, nudging him with my tail. "Let's go to the shelter." "Honey." He doesn't budge. I sigh again. Oh well. On the way to the shelter, I find Shakespeare standing on the side of the trail, talking to a bush. "Now where do you think you're going now? You don't want to go in there. I'm not finished with you. I got more stories to tell." "Shelter," I say, pointing down the trail. "Back in my day, buddies hoppity-hop-hop-hopped along trails. I can't follow you in there. We were just getting to know each other. Ah, well," and he crashes off the trail and into At the shelter, Serge asks me where Shakespeare and Happy Feet are. Shakespeare's back there wandering the woods, telling his life story to a rabbit. And Happy Feet is back at the summit crying because there's no honey left. Serge arches his eyebrow but doesn't say anything. We both understand the madness that can set in at the end of a long Appalachian Trail. The last one I'm going to read is called 18 Miles. The Descent. A constant rock hop. Hop, hop, hop. Don't let your guard down, not for an instant, or risk catching your toe in a crevasse or pitching forward onto the jagged ground. Go, go, go. Momentum carrying down feet in quick succession, one after another. Sharp, precarious edges, careful to keep balance. Hop, hop, hop. Whizzing through trees, past one another, blurring together onward towards Tennessee, then suddenly stop, stop, stop! Don't step on that black snake. Bare Branch Road. A return to climbing. Uphill through grassy valleys and lowlands full of grasshoppers and wildflowers, ambling on between the mountains, along four-wheeler roads and through barbed wire fences, past trees with arms outstretched towards the sky that look like they belong to an African savanna. Past Mosaic Cemetery, a remote burial ground that's fallen into disuse where a stone Jesus stands guard, watching hikers pass behind the rundown, once white steepled church. And then, across another road and into an alien forest where bright trunk trees are planted in equally straight, evenly spaced lines. Their branches grow outward like terrace spikes rising towards the sky, otherworldly and indescribable. And then, finally, down again, past Jones Falls, where I stand basking in the cooling mist with a can of chocolate frosting, and on to Elk River, where I amble through fields of wildflowers along grassy banks, watching the water laze along, serenity beneath the setting sun. On the day I leave my second state on the Appalachian Trail for good, I am finally beginning to comprehend my own rationale for through hiking. In her Pacific Crest travelogue, Wild, Cheryl Sprague writes that the reason for long-distance hiking had to do with what it was like to walk for miles with no other reason than to witness the accumulation of trees and of meadows, of mountains and deserts, of streams and of rocks, rivers and grasses and sunrises and sunsets. This is the thing that I've been realizing about the trail. It's not about that one single perfect Appalachian Trail moment. All this journaling I've been doing so far, trying to capture the moment, it's not about that. Well, it is and it isn't. If it were all about that one Appalachian Trail moment, why would we walk all 2,200 miles? Half an hour would suffice, provided that it's the best half hour on the Appalachian Trail. But we're not looking for that best half hour, that best moment either, because if we were doing that, we could go home once we found it. But we keep walking, even when it rains, or even when it pours, when the ice crystals beat down on our heads, or when we're struggling upwards, when we're drowning in the heat of the burning sun, we keep walking. We let it all accumulate. To be a long-distance hiker, we have to accept that not every moment, not every step or mountain, or sunrise or sunset on the trail will be the best yet. It's about the accumulation, how the moments are different, how they're the same, how they intertwine, how one leads to the next and to the next, and how they build and build and build and build like layers of a cake, like pieces of the world's puzzle. Just at 400 miles into the trail, I've already lost count of the sunsets I've seen on the AT. Perhaps, I think, the best sunset will have been the very first one that I ever saw. Or perhaps the best sunset will be the one that closes the hike at the end. Perhaps when I finish, I won't even know which sunset was the best one. But it's not about that either, because every setting of the sun, every consecutive closing of another day builds upon the last, and so on. They build and build, the accumulation of places and of people, of mountains, of towns, of white blazes and of footsteps, and each one fills me up further and further, until a point at which I can't take any more, and suddenly I find myself bursting and overflowing with wonder, and then, the next thing I know, I'm sitting on the shore of Elk River, sobbing towards the sky.
Thank you, Ben. That was really lovely. You transported me out of this stuffy room. So what I wanted to ask is, did you think about other mixed genres? In other words, what does it mean to produce, or to try to produce something that's mixed, that puts genres in relationship to each other? So how does the travelogue work with the drama, or with the kind of like slightly absurd kind of comedic stuff? Like, so it was really lovely, and I know that's not the order they're probably going to be in, but do you know what I'm saying? So like, have you thought about what it means, or are there other examples of mixed genre work that you used as a model for your?
Yeah, I have some models, but really I chose what genres to write in based on just what I thought would capture the specific moment the best. So the three I read now were all pretty typical prose kind of scenes, but there were other sections that I thought were more personal that I ended up writing as journal entries, because that was the way that I thought they would come across the best. And there were other ones that I wrote that were really, I thought were apart from their setting. So I wrote them as just a dialogue between two people without any descriptions or any placing of the people or anything like that. And the other thing, the reason I did this was because I feel like it appeals to more people, because different people will like the different sections. There are genres that I wrote and that I hate that I'm not going to write never again. There are other genres that I love. And it's the same way with the people who've been reading it. Some of the people who've been editing it have said, this is my favorite one, write more like this. And other people have said, no, I really don't like this, so you should cut it. And I don't, because other people liked it. But those were my considerations when experimenting with the genres. And it's not very new. I mean, I've read a few travelogue or nonfiction writings that have incorporated different styles like this. But nothing that carries it out to this extent.
Which did you hate? What genres did you hate writing?
What genres did I hate writing? I hated writing in script. So dialogue, but with like scene cues and things like that. The formatting was a nightmare.
So I'm assuming it's a work of creative nonfiction, right? So it's
Yes.
a myriad of two things that some people might find to be paradoxical and mutually exclusive. How did you navigate that, especially within the context of Danish?
Well, I did it. I don't know. It's the kind of writing that I like to do the most. I guess it was most inspired by memoir, by the genre of memoir. And I'm only 22, so I'm not really at the point in my life where I would be writing memoir. But I think what I've written is pretty similar to that, to very personal experience. And within the English department, it was actually hard because there are very few people who were writing creative nonfiction, and there are very few professors which work with creative nonfiction. But by mixing all the different styles and genres, it didn't particularly matter that it was creative nonfiction, because they can all be read as different things. There's sections that are like very like reporting. There's a section I wrote about when I stayed at a trail festival, and it basically reports on like a variety of different movies that were made about the Appalachian Trail that they showed. So I mean, that was a very different experience interacting with my advisor in the English department than the other sections that are more creative.
So I don't know exactly how much of this you wrote during your hike and after it, but obviously, if there was some separation, that would introduce, some changes in the memories, some uncertainty about what happened. And you say that you went back to Serge and Happy Feet and talked to that, and Hannah and talked to them about certain things. But how did you resolve it if you really couldn't remember how something happened? Did you just sort of let the embellishment be part of the creative part of the creative nonfiction, or did it really cause any problems?
Awesome question. So this is my journal. I have 9 of these, which are full of notes, full of stories, full of thoughts, just everything that came to my mind when I was on the Appalachian Trail, and I wrote it all down. And it's also in all different formats. I guess that sort of inspired the way I wrote it too, because parts of it are just notes and other parts are just very detailed descriptions of what I did all day. on this day. So I drew pretty heavily from this. I would open to a journal entry, and then I would type it up, and then I would forget it for a day or two, and then I would come back to it and write it again without looking at it. So I would write what stuck with me, and then embellish the parts that I felt were important, and then leave out the parts that I didn't think were important. There are definitely places where I just left out like whole days, right? I left out characters. Part of it was unintentional, and Happy Feet and Serge both pointed out quite a few things that I forgot, so I'm going to go back and edit that. But part of it was also intentional, because I've already written 150 pages, and I'm only about 500 miles into the hike, which is a lot of writing for not very much proportion of trail. So I have to leave out a certain amount, and writing about every person I met, and the list is about 300 people, it would get into what I had a problem with in all the rest of the literature, which is that it's just so much in detail that it's not accessible, because it writes about everything. So the places I did omit things, it was generally not because I forgot, but because of that.
Thank you.